The janitor saved the Millionaire CEO with a phrase, "Don't open that briefcase, there's a..." If this story interests you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and tell us which city you're watching from. Let's continue. The clock showed 3:15 in the morning when Emily pushed her cleaning cart down the silent corridors of the 40th floor of Horizon Tower. Her footsteps echoed softly on the polished marble floor as she carried out her usual routine in the executive suite of Horizon Tech, one of the country's largest technology companies. After 3 years working the night shift, she knew every corner, every detail of that place like the back of her hand. The environment was her silent confidant, a mute witness to her guarded dreams. During the long nights of work, while cleaning the enormous glass windows that revealed the illuminated city below, Emily allowed herself to dream. She imagined herself sitting at one of those designer desks, creating layouts and logos on a state-of-the-art computer. The desire to study graphic design still pulsed in her chest, even though reality kept her firmly anchored in her light blue uniform and rubber gloves. Necessity spoke louder than dreams. At home, her mother, Mrs. Diane, was battling a degenerative disease that consumed not only her mobility, but also a good portion of Emily's modest salary, with expensive medications and doctor's appointments. The small apartment where they lived, in the city's suburbs, was supported solely by her work as a cleaning assistant. On that specific night, something was different. The air seemed thicker, charged with an unusual energy for a time when the building normally slept. Emily noticed lights on in the main conference room, something extremely unusual for that hour. The board meeting was scheduled only for the next day, an event that had been stirring up the building during the entire previous week. Silently approaching the conference room, Emily began to distinguish muffled voices. Years of night work had sharpened her senses, and something inside told her that this wasn't a simple off-hours work meeting. Driven by a curiosity she couldn't explain herself, she strategically positioned herself behind a large decorative fern. "The device is programmed. Tomorrow, when he opens the briefcase during the presentation, it'll be the end of his career," said a deep voice that she didn't immediately recognize. "Are you sure it can't be traced?" questioned another voice, more anxious. "Impossible. Everything has been planned down to the smallest detail. The CEO will fall and all the blame will land on him. Nobody will suspect anything." Emily felt her heart race. The words were like pieces of a sinister puzzle fitting together in her mind. Even without fully understanding what was at stake, her instinct screamed that something terrible was about to happen. For the first time in 3 years of invisible work, she felt that she needed to do something more than simply clean and observe. With her hands trembling slightly, she took her cell phone from her pocket and, with as much discretion as possible, began to record the conversation. She didn't know exactly what to do with that information, but something told her she needed to document that moment. The voices continued for a few more minutes, discussing technical details that she didn't fully understand, but each word seemed to carry the weight of a conspiracy that went far beyond her comprehension. When the voices began to approach the doors, Emily quickly moved away, pushing her cleaning cart to the adjacent corridor. Her heart was beating so hard that she feared it might be heard in the midnight silence. She pretended to be focused on cleaning a potted plant when 3 men in suits passed by without even noticing her, as always happened. To them, she was just another cleaning staff member, invisible like a shadow in the night. The rest of the night dragged on like an eternity for Emily. Her hands automatically performed routine tasks, but her mind was in turmoil, reliving each word she had heard. The sun was beginning to rise on the horizon when her shift finally ended, but unlike other days, she didn't head straight home. Sitting on one of the benches in the main lobby, she observed the growing movement of executives and employees arriving for another day of work. Dressed in ordinary clothes she had brought in her backpack, she looked like just another person waiting for an appointment. Her decision was made. She needed to find a way to alert the CEO about the danger awaiting him. The clock marked exactly 8:45 when the buzz in the lobby increased. Emily immediately recognized the imposing figure of Michael Anderson, the CEO of Horizon Tech, crossing the revolving doors accompanied by his security team. It was now or never. With her heart beating like a drum in her chest, she stood up and walked determinedly toward the group. "Mr. Anderson," she called, her voice firmer than expected. "I need to speak with you. It's urgent." The security guards immediately positioned themselves between her and the CEO, but something in the tone of her voice made Michael Anderson stop and look at her with curiosity. "What's this about?" "It's about today's meeting, the briefcase you're going to receive. There's a device inside it. I overheard a conversation last night. They've planned something against you." The lobby seemed to freeze for a moment. The security guards exchanged tense glances, and Emily could feel dozens of eyes turned in her direction. The CEO, however, maintained a serene countenance as he studied her carefully. "How do you know this?" he asked, his voice calm but charged with authority. "I work in cleaning, on the night shift. I heard a conversation in the conference room on the 40th floor around 3 in the morning. I even have a recording." She hesitated, taking her cell phone with trembling hands. Michael Anderson made a gesture to his security guards, who slightly relaxed their defensive posture. "Come with me to my office," he said, surprising everyone. "George, call the internal security team, now." Minutes later, Emily found herself seated in a leather armchair in the immense presidential office, an environment she had never imagined knowing from the inside. As she played the recording on her phone, she observed the expressions of those present gradually transform. The head of security was making frantic notes, while other executives were talking urgently on the phone. "Did you recognize any of the voices?" asked the head of security after listening to the recording for the third time. Emily hesitated for a moment. One of the voices had awakened a distant memory, something from her past that she couldn't pinpoint exactly. "There's one that seems familiar, but I can't identify from where." The day that should have been a simple board meeting transformed into a whirlwind of activities. A specialized team was called to examine the briefcase that would be delivered to the CEO during the presentation. Emily remained in the office, answering questions and reviewing every detail of what she had witnessed. It was during one of these conversations that the memory finally crystallized. One of the men who had passed her in the corridor, the tallest one with a distinctive badge on his lapel, he wasn't just any executive. He was Marcus Richards, her former high school classmate, the one who used to say that people like her were only good for cleaning floors. The same one who had secured a prominent position in the company through family connections. The revelation of Marcus Richards' identity triggered an avalanche of memories for Emily. Seated in a reserved room of the security department while waiting for new instructions, her mind wandered through the corridors of State High School where she had studied. Marcus was the typical popular student, son of business owners, who made a point of humiliating scholarship students. Emily, who had earned her place through hard work and exemplary grades, was one of his favorite targets. "Can you confirm his identity in this photo?" asked Sarah Mitchell, the chief investigator of internal security, extending a tablet with Marcus's photo from a recent meeting. Emily nodded, feeling a knot in her stomach. "Yes, it's him. He was wearing the same gold badge on his lapel last night." The investigator made some notes on her laptop before continuing. "Miss Emily, I need you to understand the gravity of the situation. Mr. Richards is the company's deputy financial director. An accusation of this magnitude—" "I know what I heard," interrupted Emily, her voice firm, "and I'm certain of what I saw. He was there, along with 2 other men." At that moment, the door to the room opened and Michael Anderson entered, accompanied by an older man whom Emily recognized as Albert Wilson, chairman of the board. The CEO looked tense, but maintained his characteristic composure. "The technical team confirmed," announced Anderson without preamble. There was a sophisticated device inside the briefcase. If it had been activated during the presentation, it would have caused a short circuit in the entire data system of the boardroom. Years of projects and confidential information would have been lost. Emily felt a shiver run down her spine. The gravity of the situation was becoming even clearer. "But there's something that doesn't fit," continued Wilson, adjusting his gold-framed glasses. "How would Marcus have access to such advanced technology? And why choose this particular moment?" The answer came through an urgent knock on the door. A young security analyst entered hurriedly, carrying a folder. "Gentlemen, We found something on the security cameras in the parking garage. In recent weeks, Mr. Richards has had regular meetings with representatives from TechVision. The name caused a heavy silence in the room. TechVision was Horizon Tech's main competitor, known for its aggressive market tactics. "Today's meeting," muttered Anderson, running his hand over his face. "We were going to present Project Aurora, 3 years of research in artificial intelligence. It was going to be our big leap in the market." Emily observed the exchange of information, trying to process everything. In her hands, she still held the temporary visitor badge they had given her. Suddenly, she felt the weight of being involved in something much bigger than she had imagined. "We need to act cautiously," warned Sarah. "If Marcus realizes that we've discovered—" An alert on her computer interrupted her. "Mr. Anderson, Marcus just accessed the company's main system. He's trying to transfer files to an external server." "Block everything," ordered Anderson, already picking up his phone. "And call security to—" "Wait," interrupted Emily, surprising everyone. "There's something you need to know about Marcus, something from our past that might explain a lot." All eyes turned to her. Emily took a deep breath, organizing her memories. "In our last year of high school, there was a technology competition. Marcus and I were the finalists. My project was an accessibility software for the visually impaired. I discovered that he had bought the project ready-made from a university student." "And what happened?" questioned Wilson, interested. "I had proof. Emails, payment receipts. But on the eve of the final presentation, Marcus approached me. He offered money for me to withdraw, said his father had connections, that he could get me a scholarship to any college. I refused." Emily paused, recalling that moment. "The next day, my project simply disappeared from the school system. All backups deleted. Marcus won the competition, secured a guaranteed spot at the best technology university in the country. And life took another path." The day advanced rapidly as the investigation deepened. Emily had been transferred to a more private room where a security team monitored her activities. The story of the school competition had opened new perspectives on the case, revealing a pattern of behavior that extended for years. "We found something else," announced Ricardo, one of the system analysts, entering the room with a laptop. "In recent months, there have been several suspicious accesses to the company's system, all coming from different terminals, but with a pattern similar to what Marcus used." Sarah studied the presented data carefully. "He's been preparing this for a long time, collecting information, studying routines." "And probably not alone," added Emily, remembering the other voices she had heard the night before. A security guard entered the room hurriedly. "Marcus is no longer in the building. He left about 20 minutes ago claiming a family emergency." Emily's cell phone vibrated in her pocket. A message from an unknown number made her blood freeze. Cleaning staff should only worry about keeping the floor clean. Curious people tend to have unpleasant accidents. She showed the message to Sarah, who immediately activated a tracking team. But it wasn't just the threat that worried Emily. Her shift had ended hours ago, and her mother, Mrs. Diane, would certainly be worried about her absence. "I need to call my mother," she said, trying to stay calm. "She's sick and—" "Use this phone," offered Sarah, handing her a secure device. "We don't know if your cell phone is compromised." The call, however, was not answered. Emily tried a few more times, feeling anxiety grow with each unanswered ring. That was when she received another message, this time with a photo that made her heart stop. It was the door to her apartment, ajar. "We need to go to my house," she said, rising abruptly. "Now!" Sarah quickly organized a team. In minutes, they were on their way to the modest housing complex where Emily lived with her mother. During the trip, 2 more messages arrived. "Your mother is a very friendly lady, and how much is a janitor's—" Silence worth. The apartment was ransacked when they arrived. Drawers open, papers scattered, and a note on the kitchen table. "You have 24 hours to recant everything you said. Your mother is in good hands, for now." Emily felt her legs weaken. Sarah quickly supported her, leading her to a chair. The security team began to search the apartment for clues, while forensics were called to collect evidence. "We'll find her," assured Sarah, lightly squeezing Emily's shoulder. "But for now, you need to come with us. It's not safe to stay here." It was at that moment that a familiar voice sounded from the door. "Perhaps I can help." Emily turned to find John, the maintenance worker who always greeted her during her night rounds. But there was something different about his posture, a confidence she had never noticed before. "I'm not just a maintenance technician," he revealed, showing a badge. "I am, or rather was, a cybersecurity analyst. I've been undercover for months investigating irregularities in the company's systems, and I think I know where your mother might be." John led Emily and the security team to a reserved room in the Horizon Tech building. His expression was serious as he connected his laptop to the company's secure network. On the screen, various monitoring programs displayed data in real time. "5 years ago, I was the head of the cybersecurity team at Tech Vision," he began, his fingers dancing skillfully over the keyboard. "I discovered an industrial espionage scheme that involved high-level executives. When I tried to report it, I was silenced. They planted false evidence against me, destroyed my reputation. I lost everything: career, credibility, family." Emily watched attentively as John accessed various encrypted files. Sarah and her team remained on alert, recording every piece of information. "I spent the last few years gathering evidence, reconstructing the puzzle. I got this maintenance technician position to investigate up close. And it wasn't a coincidence that I chose the night shift." He cast a meaningful look at Emily. "I observed your work, your discretion. I knew that at some point they would make a mistake." "But what does this have to do with my mother?" asked Emily, distressed. "Marcus doesn't act alone. He's just a piece in a much larger game." TechVision has a network of safe houses throughout the city, used for questionable operations. One of them is less than 2 miles from here. Sarah immediately began to mobilize her team, but John interrupted her. "It's not that simple. They have a sophisticated security system. Any suspicious movement and what do you suggest?" questioned Sarah, clearly tense. "I have a plan," replied John, opening a floor plan on the computer. "But we'll need Emily's help. Her experience in knowing every corner of this building could be crucial." Emily felt the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. For 3 years, she had moved like a shadow through those corridors, observing, learning, memorizing every detail. Now, that knowledge could be the key to saving her mother. "There's something else you need to see," said John, accessing a protected folder. "In recent months, I've identified a pattern in communications between Marcus and other executives. They used a system of coded messages, hidden in seemingly normal maintenance files." On the screen appeared a series of technical reports. At first glance, they looked like routine documents about equipment maintenance, but John began to highlight specific words, revealing a sophisticated code. Each report contains hidden instructions, dates, locations, values. This is how they communicate without raising suspicions. "And look at this," he enlarged one of the A files. This report, dated 3 days ago, mentions a complete cleanup operation scheduled for today, exactly after the board meeting. "They weren't just planning to sabotage the presentation," concluded Sarah, her eyes widening. "They wanted to erase any trace afterward." Emily felt a chill run down her spine as she understood the true dimension of the conspiracy. Her act of courage in reporting what she had heard hadn't just prevented sabotage, it had dismantled a much more sinister plan. "There's one more thing," said John, his voice taking on an even more serious tone. "I found records of significant bank transfers to a shell company. The interesting thing is that this company is registered at the same address where I believe your mother is." At that moment, Emily's secure phone vibrated again. It was another message from the unknown number, but this time it contained only an audio file. When they played it, Mrs. Diane's voice sounded clearly. "Emily, my daughter, I'm fine. Don't worry about me. Do what needs to be done." Mrs. Diane's message, instead of bringing only concern, lit a spark of hope in Emily. Her mother was alive and apparently lucid enough to send a coded message. "Do what needs to be done" was a phrase they always used between themselves when facing difficult moments. "Your mother is smarter than they imagine," observed John, analyzing the audio file on his computer. The background of the audio has a specific interference pattern. I can use this to try to triangulate the exact location. Sarah was coordinating her team through discrete communicators, preparing a covert operation. We need to act with extreme caution if Marcus or his accomplices suspect we're approaching. I have an idea, interrupted Emily, years of silent observation finally converting into a plan. Tomorrow is general maintenance day for the building's camera system. That's when we do the heavy cleaning on the executive floors, because the cameras are turned off for 2 hours. John immediately understood where she was going, and Marcus will certainly try to use that, a window of opportunity to access the main system, thinking he won't be detected. Exactly, continued Emily. But what if, instead of waiting for him to act, we create a situation that forces him to reveal his next move? The room plunged into contemplative silence as Emily outlined her plan. Years working in the shadows had given her unique knowledge about the building's routines and vulnerabilities. Each seemingly insignificant detail she had registered in her mind now proved valuable. During maintenance, executives normally use the emergency staircase on the west side to move between floors, since the main elevators are also undergoing verification, she explained. There's a blind spot in that staircase between the 38th and 39th floor. It's where security guards usually take their unofficial coffee breaks. John added, and it's precisely in that section that there exists one of the few direct access points to the company's main server. Theoretically, it's an access only for emergencies, but someone with inside knowledge could use it, concluded Sarah, beginning to visualize the possibilities. The plan began to take shape. They would use the scheduled maintenance as cover for a more complex operation. While Marcus would think he was taking advantage of a system vulnerability, he would actually be falling into a carefully crafted trap. We need something that will definitely attract him, pondered Sarah. Something big enough that he can't resist. Project Aurora, suggested Emily. You could leak the information that a complete copy will be temporarily vulnerable during maintenance. John was already typing frantically on his computer. I can create a false access trail, something that looks like a configuration error left by a careless technician. Knowing Marcus, he'll try to use this to complete what he couldn't today. The team worked in the following hours, refining every detail of the plan. Emily contributed her unique knowledge about the building's routines, while John prepared the perfect digital environment for the trap. Sarah coordinated the logistics, strategically positioning her team. In the midst of the preparations, Emily received another message. This time it was a photo of her mother, sitting in a chair reading a newspaper. The detail that caught her attention wasn't the date of the newspaper, clearly visible to prove the photo was recent, but the small butterfly-shaped brooch that Mrs. Diane was wearing, a private code between mother and daughter meaning I'm alert, I'm acting. While the security team finalized preparations for the next day's operation, Emily couldn't take her eyes off the photo of her mother. The butterfly brooch wasn't just an accessory, it was part of a code they had developed over the years, a silent form of communication in difficult moments. There's something more in this photo, said Emily, zooming in on the image on the monitor. My mother is telling us something. John adjusted the viewing parameters, increasing the contrast. The newspaper she's reading. Can you see the name of the section? Classifieds, replied Emily, feeling her heart accelerate. We always did. Crossword puzzles together in that section. It was our way of training my vocabulary when I was a child. Sarah approached, interested. And does that mean something specific? It means she wants me to look for clues in the classifieds, explained Emily. And there's more. The butterfly brooch is turned to the left. We did that when we wanted to indicate that something important was hidden somewhere. John quickly accessed the digital version of the day's newspaper. In the classifieds section, a small advertisement caught Emily's attention. For sale, set of antique porcelain, blue butterfly collection, interested parties call. That's it, exclaimed Emily. Blue Butterfly was the name I gave to my software project in high school, the one Marcus sabotaged. My mother is trying to tell us something about that time. The revelation triggered a new line of investigation. John began to search through old school records, while Sarah mobilized a team to analyze Marcus's recent activities, related to that period. "Look at this," called John, after a few minutes of intense searching. "I found records of suspicious bank transfers made during the time of the competition. The money left a business account and ended up in an offshore. And guess what? The same financial structure is being used now." Emily felt a shiver as she realized how everything connected. He never changed his method, just perfected it. "And there's more," continued John, accessing new files. "The company that appears in these old records has the same naming pattern as the shell companies we identified in recent documents. It's as if he's been using the same scheme for years," completed Sarah. "But now, on a much larger scale." A silent alert flashed on John's computer. Someone was trying to remotely access the company's system. The IP address was quickly traced to a luxury hotel in the city center. "It's him," confirmed John. "Marcus is trying to erase his tracks." Emily observed the monitors with a mixture of apprehension and determination. Each new piece of information not only helped to assemble the puzzle of the present, but also shed light on old wounds that had never completely healed. "There's one thing that still doesn't make sense," she said thoughtfully. "Why now? Why risk everything at this particular moment?" The answer came through a file that John had just decrypted. It was an old email sent from an anonymous account to Marcus, dated a few weeks before the school competition. The content was clear. "Keep the girl away. She's more dangerous than she seems. If that software is presented, our years-long plan could go down the drain." "It wasn't just about winning a school competition," murmured Emily, feeling the pieces fit together. "My accessibility project, he must have realized that the code I developed could expose vulnerabilities in other systems." John nodded, understanding. "And now, with Project Aurora about to be launched, he feared that you, even working in cleaning, might again represent a threat. You were always too observant for his taste." The night advanced as the team continued its meticulous work. Emily had managed a few hours of rest in a room specially prepared for her, but her sleep was restless, populated by memories of the past that now gained new meanings. She woke up with a start, with an idea. "John," she called, running to the operations room. "I need to check something in the supply closet on the 40th floor." Sarah, who hadn't left her post, looked intrigued. "What's there?" "During my rounds, I always noticed that Marcus left post-its in specific places. At the time, I thought it was just an organizational habit. But now," John immediately understood. "Physical communication points. Smart. No digital trails." Emily guided them through the silent corridors to the supply closet. With the precision of someone who knew every inch of the place, she went directly to a specific shelf, behind boxes of office supplies. There, partially hidden, was a small bulletin board. "Look at the patterns," she pointed. "The colors of the post-its, the way they're organized, it's not random." John photographed the board with a special device. "I can run a pattern recognition program. If there's any code—" "Wait," interrupted Emily, touching one of the yellow papers. "There's something different about the texture." Sarah approached with an ultraviolet light. Under the bluish beam, characters invisible to the naked eye appeared. "Coordinates," she murmured, "and a sequence of numbers. They look like access codes," observed John, already typing on his tablet, "and they correspond to an industrial area in the west side of the city." Emily felt her heart race. "The same place where we think my mother is." "Close," replied John. "But this gives us something more important, confirmation of their operational pattern." As they returned to the operations room, Emily noticed something different in the environment. More people had arrived, including some faces she recognized from the news, members of the company's high command. Michael Anderson was among them, talking quietly with Albert Wilson. Seeing Emily, he made a gesture for her to approach. "Miss Emily," he began, his voice carrying a tone of respect that she had never experienced before. "What we've discovered goes far beyond a simple sabotage attempt. This could change the entire technology market in the country." Wilson added, "The question now is how much of tomorrow's operation can we share with the authorities without compromising your mother's safety?" It was a question that hung in the air. Emily looked at the Monitors where data and images continued to be processed. On one of the screens, the photo of her mother with the butterfly brooch seemed to stare at her. "My mother always taught me that truth has its own timing," she said, surprising everyone with her firmness. "And she's telling us, through that brooch, that it's not yet time to show all our cards." John, who had finished analyzing the codes found, joined the conversation. "Emily is right. We have evidence that there are more people involved, some in very high positions. If we act precipitously, we could lose everything," completed Sarah, "including Mrs. Diane." A new message arrived on Emily's secure phone. It was another photo of her mother, this time showing her arranging a bookshelf. To anyone, it would seem like a mundane image, but Emily immediately recognized the titles of the books. They were the same ones she used to study programming in her teens. Emily couldn't take her eyes off the books on the shelf in the photo. Basic Algorithms, Introduction to Programming, Data Structures. They were more than just books. They were fragments of an interrupted dream. But there was something else there, something her mother wanted her to see. "The books are out of order," she murmured, zooming in on the image. "My mother is obsessive about organization. She would never leave." John approached, interested. "What would be the correct order?" Emily began to list the titles in the sequence she always kept them. First, Introduction, then Algorithms, Structures. Her eyes widened. "The initials IAS." "IAS?" questioned Sarah, confused. "Institute for Advanced Systems," exclaimed John, his fingers flying over the keyboard. "It's one of the country's main technology research centers. And guess what? TechVision just closed a partnership with them." Michael Anderson, who was following everything closely, turned pale. Project Aurora. Part of the research was developed in partnership with the IAS. "And that's not all," continued John, accessing more files. "The institute is less than a mile from the address we identified earlier. In fact," he enlarged a map on the main screen. "That entire industrial complex is interconnected by underground tunnels from the time of construction." Emily felt a shiver as she realized the scope of the conspiracy. So it's not just about stealing the project. They want the complete research, years of development. "To replicate and patent it first," completed Albert Wilson, his voice laden with concern. "If they succeed, they can not only surpass us in the market, but establish a technological monopoly." Sarah, who was coordinating her team through a discreet communicator, intervened. "We just received information from surveillance. Marcus made 3 calls in the last 20 minutes, all to numbers registered in the name of the IAS. "And there's more," added John, analyzing data in real time. "The accesses we detected earlier, he wasn't just trying to erase tracks. He was creating a false trail, directing suspicions elsewhere." Emily watched the monitors with renewed attention. Years working behind the scenes had sharpened her ability to perceive patterns, to notice small details that others might neglect. That was when something caught her attention on one of the secondary screens. "That code there," she pointed. "It's similar to what I developed in the high school project. The basic structure is almost identical." John enlarged the indicated section. "Impossible, unless they kept my code all this time," completed Emily, feeling a mixture of anger and validation. "They not only stole my project, but continued developing it in secret." The silence that followed was heavy, loaded with implications. Michael Anderson was the first to break it. "This changes everything. We're not just dealing with current industrial espionage. It's a scheme that has been built for years, since they realized the potential of my accessibility software," said Emily. "A program I created to help people, transformed into a tool for this." At that moment, another message arrived on the secure phone. It was a short video of Mrs. Diane, apparently recorded in the same environment as the previous photos. She was leafing through one of the programming books, and for a brief moment, the camera focused on a specific page. Emily immediately recognized the chapter, Protection and Security Structures. The night advanced as the team worked tirelessly, processing each new piece of information that emerged. Emily, though exhausted, couldn't stop thinking about the meaning of her mother's latest video. Protection and Security Structures wasn't just a chapter in the book, it was a coded message. My mother is telling us that she's protected, she explained, after a moment of reflection. And more than that, she's inside their security system. John raised his eyes from his computer, intrigued. What do you mean? Think about it, continued Emily. Each message we've received, each photo, each video, they're all perfectly framed, well lit, as if someone were facilitating the communication, completed Sarah, understanding. Your mother has an ally in there. The theory gained strength when John analyzed the metadata of the images. They were all taken with the same device, probably. A latest generation cell phone. And look at this, he enlarged some technical details. The GPS was active in all of them. They wanted us to track them, concluded Emily. They were giving us precise coordinates all the time. Michael Anderson, who had left for a series of urgent calls, returned to the room with news. I got information about the IAS. In recent months, they hired a new security team. And guess who's in charge? Let me guess, said John, already typing. On the computer. Someone connected to TechVision? Better, replied Anderson, projecting a document on the main screen. Richard Mendez, Marcus Richards' brother. He changed his last name years ago, probably to avoid obvious connections. Emily felt her stomach turn. The web of conspiracies was even more intricate than they had imagined, but there was something in the new information that awakened a distant memory. Richard, she murmured. He was at school too. He was a few years older, president of the technology club. It was he who... Her voice faltered for a moment. It was he who helped sabotage my original project. John immediately began to cross-reference data. That explains the sophistication of the scheme. Richard has a background in digital security. If he's involved, he knows exactly how to create and exploit vulnerabilities, completed Sarah. Emily's phone vibrated again. This time it was a simple text message. The butterfly always returns to the garden it knows. It was a phrase her mother used to say when Emily was frustrated with a programming problem in her teens. The garden, whispered Emily, feeling her heart accelerate. The terrace. Everyone looked at her, confused. At school, I used to program in the terrace garden. It was my special place, away from the gaze of Marcus and his friends. That's where I developed most of my project. John understood immediately. And you kept backups? Yes, but not in the conventional way, replied Emily, a smile beginning to form on her lips. I transformed the code into numerical sequences and hid them in math problems. I kept everything in an ordinary notebook, as if they were school exercises. A notebook that no one would think to look for, said Sarah, amazed. And that must still be in the school library today, completed Emily. I donated it along with other materials when I gave up on college. The revelation energized the team. If the notebook still existed, it could contain definitive proof that the code used at the IAS originated from Emily's project. But more than that, it could reveal exactly how Marcus and Richard had adapted and transformed accessibility software into something much more sinister. The old state high school remained practically unchanged, as if time had hesitated to touch its exposed brick walls. Emily, accompanied by Sarah and 2 undercover agents, crossed the main gate shortly after 5 in the morning. John coordinated the operation remotely, maintaining contact through discreet communicators. The librarian, Mrs. Martha, always arrived early to organize the books before classes started, explained Emily as they walked through the silent corridors. I hope some things haven't changed. As if answering her expectation, a soft light emanated from the library. Through the glass doors, they could see a gray-haired lady methodically organizing a stack of books. Mrs. Martha, called Emily softly after they entered. The librarian adjusted her glasses, studying Emily's face for a few seconds before opening a smile of recognition. Emily? Emily Silver? My God, how long it's been? You disappeared after that competition. It's a long story, replied Emily, feeling the weight of memories. Actually, I need your help. Do you remember when I donated my school materials? How could I forget, replied Mrs. Martha, setting aside the books. It was the day you gave up the scholarship. I never understood why someone so brilliant The notebooks, interrupted Emily gently. Are they still here? The librarian thought for a moment. Oh yes, they're in the historical material section. You know, I always found your math exercises fascinating, so complex. Sometimes I take that graph paper notebook to show students as an example of dedication. Emily's heart raced. The graph paper notebook, is it still here? Of course. In fact, last week a man came asking about it. Said he was a researcher studying teaching methods from previous years. But I didn't allow him to take it. You know how I am with my books and documents. Sarah and Emily exchanged significant looks. Someone else was after the notebook. Mrs. Martha guided them to a room at the back of the library. Floor-to-ceiling shelves held decades of school history. With the precision of someone who knows every inch of her domain, the librarian went directly to a specific box. Here it is, she said, removing a worn blue-covered notebook. I always found it curious how you organized the exercises. Each problem had a specific pattern, almost like a code, completed Emily, taking the notebook with trembling hands. Flipping through the yellowed pages, Emily felt transported in time. Each equation, each seemingly random numerical sequence carried pieces of her original software. It was her years of work, preserved in a language that only she could fully decipher. John, she called through the communicator, I'm sending photos of the pages. Can you see any pattern? After a few minutes of analysis, John's voice sounded excited on the communicator. It's brilliant, Emily. You transformed variables into equations, loops into Fibonacci sequences. It's a complete coding system. And there's more, said Emily, reaching the last pages. Here's the proof we needed. The date of the last entry is after Marcus's project submission for the competition. My original code was already developed before he presented his. Sarah methodically photographed each page, while Emily explained a simplified version of the situation to Mrs. Martha. The librarian, though surprised, didn't seem completely shocked. I always knew something was wrong with that competition, she confessed. The week before the final presentation, I saw Marcus and his brother here late at night. I thought it was strange, but she hesitated. The next day, I noticed that some programming books were out of order. I never thought that, As they returned to Horizon Tech, John worked frantically on decoding the contents of the notebook. Each page revealed more details of Emily's original project, proving not only the authorship of the code, but also its true purpose. It's incredible, commented John through the communicator. Your software wasn't just for accessibility. It was her complete system of translation and pattern interpretation. The way you structured voice recognition and command conversion. It was years ahead of its time. Emily felt a mixture of pride and sadness. It was to help people like my Aunt Clara, who had a visual impairment. I wanted to create something that would allow her to use computers in a more natural, more intuitive way. And they transformed it into a spying tool, completed Sarah, her voice laden with indignation. They took a project with a social purpose and completely distorted its purpose. An alert sounded on the communicator. It was Michael Anderson, his voice tense. We have movement at the IAS. Several people arriving outside normal hours, and we just confirmed Richard Mendez is among them. They must have discovered about the notebook, said John. We need to act quickly. At that moment, Emily received a new message. It was another photo of her mother, this time showing her next to a window. The crucial detail, she was wearing not only the butterfly brooch, but also an old necklace that Emily immediately recognized. The necklace, she murmured. It was what I wore on the day of the project presentation. My mother is telling us that it's time to confront the past. Sarah quickly coordinated her team through the communicator, while the car they were in changed direction. Now heading to the IAS complex, John continued transmitting information in real time. Accesses to Horizon Tech's main system are increasing, he reported. They're trying to force entry through multiple points. It's as if they're looking for something specific. Project Aurora, concluded Emily. But it's not just that. They must have realized that they've lost control of the situation. They're trying to erase traces. The IAS complex appeared ahead, its modern facilities contrasting with the sky, That was beginning to clear. Security cameras monitored every inch of the perimeter, but Emily knew there was more at stake than just physical surveillance. "John," she called, an idea taking shape in her mind. "Remember how my original software worked? The way it translated voice patterns into commands? Yes, it was revolutionary for the time. Why? Because they must have kept the basic structure of the code. If we can access the Institute's security system, we can use your own code against them," completed John, understanding the plan. "Emily, you're brilliant. I'll start the adaptation right now." Sarah, who had received new information through her channels, added, "We have confirmation of movement in the Institute's basement. Several thermal signatures in a circular pattern." "A server room," said Emily. "That's where they must be keeping my mother, next to the equipment where they can monitor everything." At that moment, another message arrived on Emily's cell phone. It wasn't a photo or video this time, but a simple text. "The butterfly is ready to fly." It was her mother's voice, clear and direct, using the code they had developed together over the years. "She's telling us she's ready to act," translated Emily, feeling a mixture of pride and concern. "But we need to be quick. Knowing my mother, she must have her own plan." The plan began to be executed with millimetric precision. While Sarah coordinated her team to discreetly surround the perimeter of the IAS, John worked frantically to adapt Emily's original code to the Institute's security system. "It's fascinating," commented John through the communicator. "Your code has such an elegant structure that it's almost as if it were alive, naturally adapting to new environments." Emily, now dressed in a maintenance technician uniform, prepared to enter the complex along with a specialized team. Her knowledge of the code and her experience in going unnoticed would be fundamental. "Camera system hacked," announced John. "You'll have exactly 4 minutes before the automatic backup kicks in." Sarah distributed the last special communicators. "Remember, once you're inside, maintain minimal contact. Any transmission can be traced." Emily adjusted her fake badge and took a deep breath. Years working in the shadows had taught her the art of invisibility, but this time it was different. This time she chose to be invisible. The first part of the plan worked perfectly. The team split into 3 groups, each entering through a different access during the shift change. Emily, along with 2 disguised agents, headed to the maintenance sector. "Thermal signal confirmed," whispered Sarah through the communicator. "Basement, Sector E, near the main servers." Emily knew that type of environment well. Like Horizon Tech's executive floor, places that housed important equipment followed predictable security patterns, and, as always, no one paid much attention to maintenance personnel. That was when something unexpected happened. The corridor lights blinked 3 times in sequence. To anyone else, it might seem like a common failure in the electrical system, but Emily immediately recognized the pattern. "It's my mother," she murmured into the communicator. 3 blinks. It's our code for I'm acting." "Emily!" John's voice sounded urgent. "Something's happening in the servers. Someone is initiating a sequence of commands that I've never—" He stopped abruptly. On the security monitors, all cameras began to display the same pattern, a binary code that repeated infinitely. "This is—" John seemed astonished. "It's your original code, but modified, adapted. It's as if someone had perfected the basic structure and transformed it into something much more complex." Emily felt a smile form on her lips. "My mother," she said, with pride. "She didn't just sit waiting all this time. She studied, learned." Memories flooded her mind. Her mother always curious about her projects, asking questions, asking her to explain every detail of the code. The programming books that Emily had left behind and that her mother had carefully kept. The long nights when she found her awake, bent over notes. "She's not just a hostage," concluded Emily. She prepared for this moment. The Institute's security system began to show systematic failures. Doors that should be locked opened by themselves, while others closed unexpectedly. It was as if the building itself were alive, responding to an invisible command. "I detected movement," alerted Sarah. "Marcus just arrived with 3 more men. They're heading to the basement. And Richard is sending frantic commands from the security center," added John. They're trying to regain control of the system, but it's impressive. Each of their attempts is blocked by a countermeasure that seems to anticipate their movements. Emily advanced through the corridors with renewed determination. Her mother wasn't just a victim in that story. She was an active participant, using the captor's own tools against them. The code that Emily had created to help people was finally fulfilling its original purpose, even if in a way she could never have imagined. The basement of the Institute was a maze of climate-controlled corridors designed to keep the servers at an ideal temperature. Emily and her team advanced cautiously, guided both by thermal signals and by the light patterns that continued to blink in significant sequences. "Main control room 50 meters ahead," informed Sarah through the communicator. "Marcus and his men are approaching from the west corridor." John monitored the situation through the hacked systems. Mrs. Diane's code is keeping them busy. Every time they try to regain control, she redirects the security protocols. It's like a digital chess game. Emily couldn't help but feel proud. Her mother, who had always shown interest in her projects, had transformed that interest into practical knowledge. During all the time she was in the hands of her captors, she was studying, learning, preparing. A new pattern of lights caught her attention. 2 long blinks, 1 short, 2 long. "Attention," translated Emily. "She's warning us about something." She had barely finished speaking when a group of security guards appeared in the side corridor. Before they could react, however, the fire doors automatically closed, isolating them. "Your mother is amazing," exclaimed John. "She's using the security system like a chessboard, moving the pieces to protect us." Approaching the control room, Emily could hear raised voices. She immediately recognized Marcus's authoritative tone. How is she doing this? It's impossible for someone to have learned the entire system in such a short time. "The base code, here's hers," replied the voice that Emily identified as Richard's. "Or rather her daughter's. We just modified and expanded it over the years. She must have recognized the pattern." "Shut up, both of you," a third voice interrupted. "We have to regain control before—" The sentence was interrupted by the sound of all the doors in the room opening simultaneously. Emily, along with her team and Sarah's agents, entered the environment at the same time that Marcus and his men arrived from the other side. In the center of the room, calmly seated before several monitors, was Mrs. Diane. Her fingers danced over a keyboard with the precision of someone who intimately knew every command. "Ah, finally," she said, without taking her eyes off the screens. "I was beginning to tire of playing with them." Marcus drew a gun, but before he could aim it, an automatic containment system was activated, immobilizing him along with his accomplices with security barriers that emerged from the ceiling. "This trick of pointing guns at others," commented Mrs. Diane, finally turning to face him, "is as predictable as your poorly written code. You know, during these weeks I had plenty of time to study not only the system but also the historical records. You were never really brilliant, Marcus. You always needed to steal ideas from others." Emily ran to hug her mother, while Sarah and her team took control of the situation. John, still connected by the communicator, couldn't contain his enthusiasm. "Mrs. Diane, you are phenomenal. The way you adapted the original code, it's simply brilliant." "Oh dear," she replied, smiling. "When you spend years watching your daughter develop something so special, you end up learning a thing or two. I just needed time and motivation to put it all into practice." Marcus, still trapped by the security barrier, maintained his air of arrogance. "You have no proof of anything." "It's our word against that of a janitor and—" "Actually," interrupted Emily, "we have the notebook, my high school notebook, with all the original code dated and documented. And now we also have all the records from the Institute's system, showing exactly how you modified and used my work over the years." The control room of the IAS had transformed into the epicenter of an operation that went far beyond the rescue of Mrs. Diane. While Sarah coordinated the arrest of Marcus and his accomplices, John worked remotely to ensure that all digital evidence was preserved. "The servers are full of information," reported John through the communicator. "It's not just Emily's code they stole. There are projects from dozens of other developers, all modified and used without authorization." Mrs. Diane, still seated at her workstation, continued monitoring the systems. During my captivity, I had access to much more than they imagined. Every line of code, every stolen project, and everything was recorded. Emily observed her mother with a mixture of admiration and curiosity. How did you manage to learn all? For this so quickly? A soft smile formed on Mrs. Diane's lips. Daughter, do you think I just watched you program all those years? Every time you explained your project, every line of code that you commented aloud while working, I absorbed everything. I just needed time to put that knowledge into practice. Richard, who until then had remained silent, let out a bitter laugh. You don't understand what's at stake here. This is much bigger than a simple code theft. Oh, we understand perfectly, replied Mrs. Diane, swiveling her chair to face him. You created an international network of industrial espionage. Emily's code, which was developed to help people with disabilities, you transformed into a tool for invasion and control. Sarah, who had just received new information on her tablet, added, We just received confirmation. Tech Vision isn't the only company involved. There are connections with corporations from at least 5 different countries. And every penny earned from this is documented, completed Mrs. Diane, accessing a new series of files. Transfers, disguised contracts, shell companies. I found everything while they thought I was just a frightened old lady. Michael Anderson, who had arrived in the room accompanied by Albert Wilson, observed everything with a grave expression. This explains the attacks that other companies in the sector had been suffering. It wasn't just unfair competition, it was a coordinated operation. Emily approached Marcus, who maintained his air of superiority even while detained. You never changed, did you? Since high school, always thinking you could take whatever you wanted from others. You're nothing but a janitor, he spat. You'll never understand how the world really works. No, Marcus, replied Emily, her voice calm but firm. You're the one who never understood. While you were stealing ideas from others, I learned the value of honest work. Each night I spent cleaning those corridors taught me more about dignity than you'll ever understand. John interrupted through the communicator. Emily, you need to see this. I'm sending it to the main screen. On the monitors appeared a series of documents dated years ago. They were school records, including emails and messages exchanged between Marcus, Richard, and other people. They planned this from the beginning, explained John. The technology competition was just the start. They already had connections with companies interested in surveillance technologies. Your accessibility project, Emily, was the first of many that they stole and corrupted. The atmosphere in the control room became increasingly tense as new revelations emerged. John continued sending documents and records that proved years of illicit activities, while Sarah organized teams to ensure that no evidence was lost. You need to see this, called Mrs. Diane, accessing a protected folder in the system. I found something interesting while searching through the old files. Remember Aunt Clara, Emily? The software you created to help her. Emily approached the monitor, feeling her heart tighten with the memory of her aunt, who had so inspired her to create the accessibility project. They not only stole your code, continued Mrs. Diane, her voice laden with indignation, they actively prevented similar technologies from being developed by others. There are records of dozens of promising projects that were sabotaged or bought and shelved. Michael Anderson examined the documents with growing concern. They created a reverse monopoly. Instead of developing technology to help people, they used their knowledge to prevent others from doing so. And they profited millions from it, added Sarah, analyzing financial records. Each stolen project, each suppressed technology, generated lucrative contracts with companies interested in corporate espionage. Emily felt a mixture of anger and sadness. Her project, born from the desire to help people like her aunt, had been transformed into something that did exactly the opposite. But now we have everything documented, said John through the communicator. Every line of code, every transaction, every conspiracy. And most importantly, we have proof that the original code is yours, Emily. At that moment, Albert Wilson approached Emily with a serious expression. Miss Silver, on behalf of the Horizon Tech Board, I would like to make a proposal. The room fell silent as he continued. We would like to resume your original project. Not only that, we want you to lead a new division in the company focused on assistive technologies. Your code, used in the way it was originally conceived, can help thousands of people." Emily looked at her mother, who smiled with pride. Mrs. Diane nodded softly, as she always did when supporting her daughter's decisions. "With one condition," replied Emily. "I want my mother to be part of the team. She proved she has a natural talent for programming, and nobody knows the code better than she does." "Actually," interrupted Mrs. Diane with a mischievous smile, "I made some improvements to your original algorithm while I was hosted here. I think you'll like the modifications." The tension in the room was broken by relieved laughter. Even Sarah, always serious, couldn't contain a smile. "Then it's decided," concluded Anderson. "As soon as this whole situation is legally resolved, we'll start the project. And as for you," he turned to Marcus and Richard, "I think you have a lot to explain to the authorities." It was at that moment that John made another surprising discovery. "Emily, there's something here you need to see. In the oldest files, there are records of other students from your school. It seems you weren't their first victim." John's discovery opened a new dimension in the investigation. On the monitors in the control room, a series of files revealed a much larger story than they had imagined. Emily recognized several names, former schoolmates, talented young people who, like her, had mysteriously disappeared from the technology scene. "Anna Lewis," Emily read aloud. "She developed a smart irrigation system in her sophomore year. She gained prominence in all the science fairs and then simply gave up on everything." "Charlie Edwards," continued John through the communicator, "created a financial education app for underprivileged communities. The project was even presented at an international conference but was never implemented." Mrs. Diane, who continued exploring the files, made an even more disturbing discovery. "Look at this. Emails between Marcus and companies interested in ensuring exclusivity in the market. They not only stole the ideas, but actively prevented these young talents from developing." Sarah, who coordinated the collection of evidence, added, "We found payment records, scholarships mysteriously cancelled, job opportunities that disappeared at the last moment." "An entire generation of innovators," murmured Michael Anderson, his voice laden with regret. "How many lives were affected? How many ideas that could have changed the world were suppressed?" Emily felt the weight of that revelation. It wasn't just her personal story of injustice, it was part of a much larger scheme which had stolen dreams and opportunities from dozens of talented young people. "We need to do something for them too," she said, determined. "We can't just move forward knowing this." Albert Wilson, who had remained silent, absorbing the information, stepped forward. "Perhaps we can expand our initial proposal. Instead of just a division of assistive technologies, we can create a complete social innovation program." "A development center," complimented Anderson, understanding the idea, "where all these lost talents can have a new chance." Mrs. Diane smiled, still typing commands at her terminal. "And I just found something that can help with that. They not only kept the stolen projects, they maintained complete copies with all the original documentation." John quickly confirmed the information. "It's true, all the projects are here intact. They kept everything archived, probably to ensure that no one else developed something similar." "We can return these projects to their original creators," suggested Emily. "Not only that, we can offer the structure and support they never had." Sarah, who had just received new information on her communicator, interrupted. "We have another situation. Several of the former students identified in the files are beginning to make contact. It seems that news of what happened here is already spreading." "And there's more," added John. "I'm receiving messages from developers from around the world. People who had their projects blocked or sabotaged by Marcus and Richard's network. It's as if a dam had broken." Emily observed the monitors, where a growing list of names and projects unfolded. Each entry represented an interrupted story, a postponed dream, a suppressed innovation. But now there was a chance to rewrite that chapter. "I think we've found our true mission," she said, turning to Anderson and Wilson. "It's not just about recovering my project or exposing a conspiracy, it's about restoring possibilities." The following hours were a whirlwind of activities. While Sarah coordinated the legal process with authorities, technical teams worked to ensure that each byte of information was properly preserved and documented. Emily, her mother, and John focused on organizing and cataloging the recovered projects. "It's amazing how each of these projects had a clear social purpose," observed Mrs. Diane, analyzing the files. "Technology for sustainable agriculture, adaptive education systems, urban mobility solutions, and all were systematically suppressed," completed John through the communicator. "But look at this. I'm cross-referencing data from the original projects with patents registered in recent years. Several large companies developed similar technologies, always a few months after each project was shelved." Michael Anderson, who had spent the last few hours in emergency meetings with the Horizon Tech Board, returned to the room with news. The board unanimously approved. "We're going to create the Center for Social Innovation and Inclusive Technology. Emily, we want you to lead the project." "Me?" Emily asked, surprised. "But I don't have formal training nor experience in management." "You have something much more valuable," interrupted Wilson. "Integrity, social vision, and a deep understanding of the impact that technology can have on people's lives. Besides, your personal story is a testimony to what we want to combat and transform." Mrs. Diane squeezed her daughter's hand. "And you won't be alone. There's an entire community of innovators waiting to contribute." As if to confirm her words, John announced, "The responses keep coming. Developers, programmers, researchers, people who had their ideas stolen or suppressed are making themselves known. Some are already offering support and mentorship for new projects." Sarah, who supervised the transfer of Marcus and Richard into the custody of the authorities, added, "And the evidence we collected here will ensure that this type of scheme isn't easily repeated." Emily observed the movement in the room with a mixture of emotions. In less than 48 hours, her life had completely changed, from invisible cleaning assistant to leader of a project that could transform lives. "There's one more thing," said Anderson, a discreet smile forming on his face. "The board insisted that your first action as director be to resume your studies. You'll have a full scholarship to study graphic design, as you always dreamed." Silent tears ran down Emily's face. Mrs. Diane hugged her, also emotional. "And we can't forget about you, Mrs. Diane," continued Anderson. "Your programming skills are impressive. We would like you to lead our digital security team." "Only if I can continue perfecting my daughter's code," she replied with a playful smile. "I still have some ideas to improve that accessibility system." John, who continued monitoring the repercussions, shared more news. "You won't believe it, but the story is already going viral on social media. Hashtags like Teen Tech Justice and Innovation for All are trending. And this is just the beginning," said Emily, her voice firm. "Each recovered project, each restored dream will be a step in the right direction. We're going to transform this story of theft and suppression into a movement of innovation and inclusion." 3 months passed since the events at the Institute for Business Automation. The old executive floor of Horizon Tech had been completely transformed. Where Emily once cleaned silent corridors during the early morning hours, a vibrant environment of innovation and creativity now buzzed. The Center for Social Innovation and Inclusive Technology occupied the entire 40th floor. Large glass windows, once symbols of an invisible barrier between worlds, now allowed natural light to illuminate collaborative spaces where developers, designers, and researchers worked together. Emily, wearing a professional blazer over a t-shirt with the center's logo, was conducting a meeting with Anna Lewis and Charlie Edwards, two of the rediscovered talents through the recovered files. Anna's smart irrigation system is already in the testing phase in 3 rural communities, explained Emily, projecting graphs on an interactive screen. And Charlie's financial education app is impacting more than 10,000 families. "I never imagined I would work with technology again," confessed Anna, emotional. "After what happened in high school, I thought my dream was over." Charlie nodded, understanding. "It's surreal to think that we were all part of the same sabotage scheme, but look at us now. In the main laboratory, Mrs. Diane coordinated a team of programmers, her life experience bringing a unique perspective to the development of technological solutions. Emily's original code had evolved into a complete digital accessibility platform, incorporating the improvements that Mrs. Diane implemented during her captivity. Every line of code must have a social purpose, she used to tell the young developers. Technology without humanity is like a butterfly without wings. John, who had become the center's technical director, entered the meeting room with exciting news. The mentorship program already has more than 100 enrollments. These are students from all over the country wanting to develop social impact projects. Sarah, who had maintained her connection to the project even after the conclusion of the investigation, was also present. And the evidence we collected led to the discovery of similar schemes in other countries. We're creating an international network of protection for social innovation. Emily observed everything with a mixture of pride and gratitude. On her desk, a frame displayed an old photo. Her as a teenager, holding a second-place trophy from a middle school science fair. Next to it, her newly framed diploma from the first semester of graphic design shone with the promise of a renewed dream. "Sometimes I still find myself thinking," she commented to her mother during a quiet moment, "how everything changed because of a conversation I overheard during my cleaning rounds." Mrs. Diane smiled, adjusting the butterfly brooch that she now wore as a symbol of the digital security department. "It wasn't just the conversation, daughter. It was your courage to act, even when the world seemed to conspire against you." Michael Anderson, who was stopping by for a visit to the center, joined the conversation. "You know what impresses me most? How you transformed a story of theft and sabotage into a movement of social innovation." "And we're just beginning," replied Emily, observing through the large windows the city that stretched below. "Each recovered project, each new talent discovered, is a piece in building a more just and inclusive future." At that moment, a notification sounded on the center's computers. It was the first public test of the improved accessibility software. On the main screen, dozens of users with different special needs began to interact with the platform, their experiences being monitored in real time. The sun was setting over the city, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, as Emily organized the last details for the official inauguration event of the Center for Social Innovation and Inclusive Technology. The auditorium on the 40th floor, previously reserved only for executive meetings, was now filled with people from different backgrounds and stories. In the front row, Mrs. Diane proudly adjusted her butterfly brooch, a symbol that had become the center's trademark. Beside her, John was finalizing the presentation that would show the first results of the recovered and revitalized projects. "Nervous?" asked Sarah, who had become a close friend in recent months. Emily took a deep breath, adjusting the microphone on her blazer. "A little. It still seems surreal to be here, about to speak to all these people. 4 months ago, I was cleaning this same auditorium. The event began with Michael Anderson making an emotional introduction. He spoke about transformation, about how a cleaning employee not only saved the company from sabotage, but also revealed a scheme that had suffocated social innovations for years. When it was her turn to speak, Emily walked to the stage with the same determination that had led her to confront Marcus months before. She looked at the audience, recognizing faces that were previously just names in stolen files, inventors, programmers, dreamers who had recovered their projects and their dignity. "Few months ago, I was invisible," she began. "Like many of you, I had my dreams interrupted by people who believed they could determine who deserved or not to have a voice in the world of technology. But today, we are rewriting that story." On the screen behind her, images showed the projects in development. Anna's irrigation system being implemented in rural communities, Charlie's financial education app transforming lives, and dozens of other initiatives that were finally coming to life. "The center is not just a space for technological development," she continued. "It's a symbol of resistance and transformation. Each line of code written here, each project developed, carries within it the DNA of inclusion and social justice. Mrs. Diane, from her place in the audience, smiled with tears in her eyes. Her daughter, who had never given up on her principles even in the most difficult moments, now led a silent revolution in the world of technology. "And we cannot forget," added Emily, her voice laden with emotion, "that sometimes the greatest transformations begin in the most unlikely places." A cleaning assistant who dreamed of graphic design, a mother who learned programming to protect her daughter, a maintenance technician who never lost his integrity. The event culminated with the official launch of the accessibility platform, now expanded and perfected. In the live demonstration, users from all over the country shared their experiences, showing how the technology was truly fulfilling its original purpose, helping people. When the evening came to an end, Emily remained in the now empty auditorium, observing the illuminated city through the large windows. John, who had stayed to organize the last technical details, approached. "You know what's most incredible?" he said. "All this began because you decided not to be invisible." Emily smiled, touching the small butterfly brooch that her mother had given her.